Good evening. I'm Cristobal Addo, and I'm a senior year honors nursing major at Chicago State University.
And I'm Maria Sierra, a senior honors nursing major at Chicago State University.
When I began my first year at CSU at the height of a global pandemic, I wasn't so sure I'll be standing here tonight as a senior, a CSU Wright Scholar, a peer mentor, a student tutor, a volunteer, and a student counselor, but I didn't get here alone.
We both are the beneficiaries of the care and assertive, consistent commitment of a group of caring leaders who encourage us to keep going even when the going got tough.
During those very rough first few months, when I was one of few students living on a rather deserted campus, the executive director of Chicago State Foundation, now the executive director here at Khan TV, encouraged me to hold on because once the campus reopened, I would find my niche and sure footing. He was right.
The power of the village of support has made it possible for student scholars like Cristobal and I to not only dream of a brighter future, but to achieve it. Ours is not a journey of ease, but a journey made possible because of mentors and tutors and scholarship supports and people who believe we were more than statistics. They believed that we could take flight and soar.
Every student deserves the chance to soar, and tonight we come together to examine, redouble our collective effort to ensure that every student can.
Cristobal and Maria, thank you so much for sharing your stories and opening us up. Good evening. I'm Sufyan Sohel, the host of Khan TV's original program, Change Agents.
And I'm Tania Wittgenfeld King, Assistant Vice Chancellor at SIU Carbondale.
Tonight, on a very special edition of Change Agents, we're talking about the important matter of education. More specifically, how might we collectively redouble our efforts and close the race gap?
We like to view higher education as the great equalizer that leads to social mobility. But selective colleges have long been accused of perpetuating class divides rather than blurring them.
A recent landmark study by Stanford University's Caroline Hoxby and Harvard's Christopher Avery lent further empirical evidence to this accusation. The study found that high-achieving, low-income students do not have access to selective schools. This mismatch is due to a lack of knowledge, not quality. Low-income students outside of major urban centers do not even apply to the top-tier colleges for which they are qualified.
College degrees are regarded as the primary vehicle for reducing poverty and closing the wealth gaps between people of color and whites. Yet disparities exist and are alarming, as underscored by the following key stats. African American students are less likely than white students to have access to college-ready courses. In fact, in 2011 through 12, only 57% of Black students had access to a full range of math and science courses necessary for college readiness, compared to 81% of Asian American students and 71% of white students. Even when Black students do have access to honors or advanced placement courses, they are vastly underrepresented in these courses. Black and Latino students represent 38% of students in schools that offer AP courses, but only 29% of students enrolled in at least one AP course. Black and Latino students also have less access to gifted and talented education programs than white students. Research has shown evidence of systemic bias in teacher expectations for African American students, and non-Black teachers were found to have lower expectation of Black students than their Black teachers. African American students are less likely to be college ready. In fact, 61% of ACT-tested Black students in the 2015 high school graduating class met none of the 4 ACT college readiness benchmarks, nearly twice the 31% rate for all students. Students of color are often concentrated in schools with fewer resources. Schools with 90% or more students of color spend $733 less per student per year than with schools with 90% or more white students.
This lack of access, academic readiness, and financial resources contribute to the barriers that many first-generation, low-income minority college students face when trying to successfully navigate college and enter our workforce. In order to prepare students to successfully navigate college, enter the workforce, and earn equitable pay, we must seek to address these inequities early on and provide holistic, wraparound support to mitigate the disparities. And that's exactly what each of our panelists tonight are doing each and every day. Let's meet them now. I have Jeffrey Beckham, CEO of Chicago Scholars, Dr. Jeffrey Bergen, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at Southern Illinois University, Amy Cisneros, Managing Director at Braven, Veronica Herrero, Executive Vice Chancellor of Institutional Advancement, Chief of Staff and Foundation President at the City Colleges of Chicago, and Priya Linson, Executive Director at One Goal Chicago.
Welcome to each of you, and thank you for joining us for this incredibly important conversation. Let's jump right in with the first question for each of you. This is clearly not easy work, and the Supreme Court has made it even harder to provide access and opportunities for students of color. With all the turmoil and barriers that come with being an administrator, please tell us, what is your why? Why do you do the work you do?
I'll kick us off. Well, for me, quite simply, it's because I am the students that I serve. I grew up in Auburn Gresham, was a first generation college graduate myself, and I represent the kids that I want to serve and work for. I was in technology for a long time, and when I would go to different conferences, I would always see the same thing: lack of people of color and lack of women. And the work that I get to do is building future leaders to take on those roles and really change their communities and move their families from multi-generational poverty to prosperity.
Thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity of being here. For me, it's really about doing those things for my students that was done for me in my undergraduate experience, making sure that I pour into them positively, doing those things that will allow for them to understand that they have the ability to be successful. We want to make sure, and I make sure, my staff makes sure, that every day we try to grow where we are planted, making sure that we plant the necessary seeds for success. We talk about, and we have great leadership at our institution, we talk about the ability to embody the living mission of Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. We talk about access to opportunity. We talk about shaping future leaders, impacting community, and most importantly, transforming lives. Education is an opportunity really for students to change the conditions of themselves, their families, and their communities. And so that's my why. I want to make sure that we change the world.
Wow, thank you.
Amy Cisneros with Braven. I am here as a proud Latina and first-generation college graduate. My why is deeply personal to me in making sure that we are supporting students on the path to self-actualization. I stand on the shoulders of many of my supporters, and I want to make sure that I am the shoulders for our students. In this country, we've promised that with hard work, you're going to be able to achieve this outcome, and the reality is that it's not true. There need a lot of supports along the way, and Braven's mission is deeply personal to me because we're empowering students with the skills, confidence, network, and experiences to make sure that they're on the path to economic mobility.
So my story is also personal. I bet it's going to be personal for all of us here. I'm the daughter of two Mexican immigrants who arrived here in the U.S. with no more than a grade school education. My mom went to a career technical school to become an educator. And then when they came here to find, to have a better life with no guarantee really of having a better life, but they took that risk and they knew that education would be that vehicle to really have a better life for their daughters. And we all did go to college. We all did, our family is doing better. However, what was, there are a few moments for me, in undergrad and as a grad student, I was one of very few brown, if not always like the only brown girl in my class. And at first it was just an individual thing of feeling like an imposter, like you don't belong. And at some point I said, you know what? No, there should be many more brown and black faces in this class. And it's not because of who we are, it's because the system wasn't designed to help us be successful. And so as soon as that that light bulb went off, I decided I would really just dedicate my career to helping to change the system that was not designed for us, and like all of us are doing, redesigning it so that we are supporting more students of color.
Wow, thank you.
Like others, my story is very personal. I was born into and grew up in an immigrant family where when it came time for me to be examining what I wanted to do with my life, my parents didn't understand the system and couldn't advise me and couldn't support me. At the same time, our schools are so overloaded that counselors don't have the bandwidth to be spending time with students and really helping them understand what their pathways might be. fast forward to when I became a New York City public school teacher at the beginning of my career, and I was supporting students like me, but who had even more barriers, and many of whom were first generation in their families to go to college, or even think about that path. And it struck me that we were starting these conversations far too late. Our school didn't start any kind of post-secondary discussions until students were into their senior year. It's one of the reasons that at One Goal we really believe in starting advising and support as early as possible. And we're trying to transform the way that young people experience that kind of advising, both while they're in high school and through the transition into their post-secondary paths.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your why, and being here for the students to follow. Sufyan, over to you.
Thank you so much. For our university representatives, year over year, have your enrollment numbers increased or decreased? And what would you say are the 3 biggest factors impacting enrollment performance at your institution? And I may have one more follow-up after that. So.
Well, we've been very fortunate. Our numbers are up, and we're up in multiple categories and have been for several years. And that's unheard of considering coming out of the pandemic. We have an enrollment staff that works diligently, getting out on the road and making contact with students all over the country, all over the world, to talk about Southern Illinois University Carbondale. But more importantly, it is a campus-wide, a community-wide effort in making sure that we speak about the institution, how wonderful it is, and the academic opportunity that is provided. And so with the fruits of all of that hard work, we've been able to increase numbers in graduate students, transfer students, number of freshmen, and there are, of course, programs that assist us. Obviously, we have several partnerships with Saluki Step Ahead that allows for our transfer students, and thank you to our colleagues at the City Colleges of Chicago that we afford students who may not necessarily be able to come to Carbondale, but we help them financially, and they are able to also come and get an education from SIU Carbondale. We have programs such as our Hope Chicago program, where the foundation pays for specifically room, board, tuition fees, and gives them a stipend. And so we work diligently to try make sure that we show off the campus. We get students in early, whether it be in high school, various visits. We make sure that we come and we go to the school specifically in Chicago, but all over the country, so that we talk about how wonderful SIU is. And so with that, in creating those kinds of programs, looking at the majors, looking at predictive analytics of how students can be successful, we've seen the fruits. And so we're very thankful for that, and we're going to keep pressing in the new cycle for the 24-25 academic year.
Thank you.
So our enrollment, we're also quite fortunate that our enrollment has been going up significantly. But the way that we think about it, it's not just that our enrollment is going up, it's our reach is getting greater, right? And as a mission-based, public institution, our goal is to reach as many Chicagoans as we can, especially those that need us the most. And what we're finding is, as I would say we are rebounding. We're not quite at pre-pandemic numbers quite yet, but we are almost there. And our fall numbers look really promising. We're pretty excited. But the fact is, we're increasing equitably. So we're seeing the greatest increases and our greatest retention gains among our Black males and Latinx males, as well as our Black and Latinx females. I would say, I would attribute our increases to our relationship with Chicago Public Schools. We have this wonderful partnership with them called the Chicago Roadmap. We talked about how to navigate college and how to make sure first-gen students know how to enroll. We've got post-secondary navigators, we call them, at all of our high schools, especially those that need us the most, making sure that those students know what pathways exist, giving students hope, and having them transition, and then offering free college through Promise programs and through free short-term programs that we offer. And so now I think we're really starting to see the fruits of all of those programs that we put into place 2 years ago, some of them just 2 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Kudos to both you and your institutions for doing such great work.
That's awesome. I have the next question. So staying on topic of recruitment and enrollment, Name a key unique effort of each of your institutions and organizations that you're implementing presently to increase college enrollment, such as scholarship programs, mentoring programs, tutoring programs, and so forth.
I'd love to start here and just jumping off of what Jeffrey and Veronica shared. At One Goal, we are working to demystify the post-secondary process for young people and to arm them with information so that they can be empowered to make the right decisions for themselves. And that means helping them understand while they're still in high school what resources are out there. A big part of our work at One Goal is reaching out and joining hands with other organizations that are providing support, but that might not be accessible to young people. So we do that in a couple of ways. The first thing is we want students to understand that they have choices and that they can find choices of institutions or programs that will give them a leg up in terms of both enrolling, being retained, staying on campus, and then completing a degree or credential. And that comes through partnerships like with city colleges and 1 Million Degrees. When students are entering a city college campus where they're automatically a 1 Million Degrees scholar, it means they're getting support from One Goal, they're getting support from 1 Million Degrees, and they're getting support from the institution. They're more likely to be able to obtain a degree. And then the second thing is we want our the access that we offer to be available to students that don't have our day-to-day One Goal course. And that we do that in a couple of ways, but one is through our online open access website, gradplan.com, which allows young people to access information that might sort of be a black hole for them.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, we launched a Young Men of Color program a year ago at Chicago Scholars, work with our Black and brown boys, particularly in the sophomore year of high school. Traditionally, our program starts in the junior year, the end of the junior year for young people, but we started in sophomore year to do early exposure. So some of the things you've heard on the panel, in particular with young men of color, recognizing that it's a gap in our city, and it's been a gap. Some of the statistics you shared really point out that. And so it's a program that really is dedicated to exposing young men of color to the opportunities that exist to them, both college and career. And we've got great partnerships with organizations like the Black Hawks and the CTA and so many others who work with our students to really expose them to the end goal, career. We also have an internship program that we built a few years back with Invest for Kids that allows students to get an early internship experience, identifying the career early on and then having real world experience to demonstrate mastery of skill, to have something on their resume so that when they graduate from college, they have a job lined up. Hopefully that's usually the goal with that program. And so the Emerge program, our Young Men of Color program are both designed to do early exposure to let young people see what they can become.
That's great. You know, they have a saying, you can't be what you can't see. So
That's right.
That exposure for our Black and brown males is so important. Thank you for that.
Anyone else like to answer that question?
Well, and one of the things I think is very important, as Jeffrey alluded to, really showing off the campus and allowing individuals to see what they can be. And so we bust down students from Chicagoland area and all over the state of Illinois and even St. Louis. We make sure that students can see the campus. When we begin to think about our Imagine 2030 strategic plan, we begin to partner with the districts within the state, but specifically those districts within Southern Illinois. And so we have cabinet members, the chancellor and others who mentor in the school district area and other areas around the Southern Illinois region. We blanket several cities across the country. We have most recently in September, we had our Saluki takeover of Chicago, where we came and we played a football game against Northern Illinois and won. But we also made sure that we visited several high schools and continued to strengthen our partnerships with Chicago Public Schools and community colleges. We also have one in St. Louis. We also began to talk about Texas and Florida, Nashville, Tennessee. And so we want to make sure that the name of Southern Illinois University Carbondale is everywhere. And this really is something that starts with our president, our chancellor, and everyone around campus.
Just to pick up on one thing that you shared, Jeffrey, I think that we can't underestimate the importance of college visits and how important it is for young people to spend time on campus and to start envisioning themselves there, experiencing near peer relationships, seeing students like them on campus being successful. It's one of the reasons that college visits is so important to our program, and I think that's something that much of the work that we lead is in common.
That's interesting you say that. My first experience was with Southern Illinois University. I paid $40 to take the bus. Went from 95th and the Dan Ryan, and I got down to Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, and I felt like I belonged. And so that was it. That was the only school I applied to. I knew that was the school for me just because of that one trip. The best $40 I ever spent.
We're starting to have more examples of university partners that we work with actually offer low cost or no cost travel to be able to attend those days. They're just so important.
That's important. You want them to have some skin in the game, but you also don't want to create a barrier for them financially to participate.
That's
so
right.
Thank you for that.
And I would just add that we've had several. I mentioned a few of our scholarship programs and some of the initiatives we have at Chicago Public Schools, where we're supporting students directly and helping them to see what pathways are available to them. But I think that the other thing we've done differently and that we're really quite proud of is our effort to reach the students who wouldn't otherwise go to college, right? So not just going for the students that already see the path, right? Or that might be thinking, I'm gonna go to college, I don't know why, but I'm gonna go to college. Now you've got a whole population of students that are saying, college isn't for me, or I'm not college material. We've got students over in our option schools, right? The alternative schools, their college going rates are so low. And some of it is hope, some of it's mobility, some of it's flexibility that they need, they can't find. I mean, they're working, they have so many responsibilities. And we need to think about how do we make our college a welcoming place? Like, how do we become student ready, right? As President Hollingsworth over at Olive Harvey loves to say, how do we become student ready? So we've developed scholarships for option school students. We have seen our numbers increase so much over the last 2 years since we've had it available, because we're telling them, you are talent that we want, and we're gonna pay for you to be here. We're gonna provide you with all the supports you need. So I think that message of like, college is for you and we are here for you is incredibly important, and not just increasing enrollment, but reaching those who wouldn't otherwise come.
That's right. I love it. Thank you for that.
What I'll add for Braven, we're in a unique position because we're higher ed adjacent, so we're deeply embedded within the higher ed structure, but we typically start working with students in their sophomore year of college. But because we're deeply embedded within our higher ed partnerships, what we're able to do is start to have a strategy conversations with our partnerships and how they use actually Braven as an enrollment strategy. We see so much more now, really the familial aspect of the college decision and going process, and how we want to move away from really being this, not an individual choice, it's really a family decision around where you go to school, especially for our first generation college students. And we're working deeply with our universities around how they use Braven as an enrollment strategy, because their parents want to make sure their students are set up to build generational wealth. They're building it for themselves, for their communities, for their families. That's a lasting impact.
I appreciate you both making those comments, because I feel more and more from what I see, and I hope you agree. If you don't, please let me know. But our students are juggling more and more, right? There's family responsibilities, work, as you mentioned, other obligations. And oftentimes those can pose barriers to them and their education and completing it in a timely manner. I think we're seeing 4 years is not necessarily traditional anymore, and we're seeing how that looks in different ways. People returning after several years off, taking gaps. What other opportunities and investments and resources are you all offering for students who may need to work or support their families while pursuing higher education?
Well, if I may, one of the things, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, our Southern Illinois University Foundation does an exceptional job at raising money to assist students. I know that this year, specifically, approximately 1,600 students received dollars towards scholarships to attend school, and rough guesstimation of about $5 million. And that's on top of their financial aid packages. And so we try to create opportunities to close those gaps where there may be financial barriers. Obviously, there are other opportunities, and we begin to look at our Bryson Future Scholars Program, where students who may not be academically sound on the front end, we bring them in, we allow them to take classes, which cuts down on some of their costs, so that they can begin to become acclimated to college, so that if they decide and they move forward academically, they come to SIU, and then that's less courses that they have to take, because we try to focus 15 to finish. If you take 15 classes each semester, you'll get to that 120 credit hours towards your graduation degree faster than if you take 12 and 9 here and there. And so we try to create those financial and academic opportunities so that the students who come to our university can be successful in a timely fashion, and they're not in debt when they leave.
That's really important. I just paid off my law school loans and all my other student loans. I mean,
I'm still waiting on Uncle Joe.
But it's due to a lot of programs that the government offers and others, right, that made that path, especially being in the nonprofit industry myself, that made that more feasible and practical. Not everyone has those opportunities to have their loans forgiven, et cetera. So what can we all do collectively to make even cost not as much of a barrier on them or their families?
To keep things on the financial, on the topic of finance, it is sometimes surprising to people how very small gaps or very small sudden financial challenges will prevent a student from staying or returning to campus. Sometimes we're talking about as small as $500. A student might come home, not have the ability to pay for getting back to campus. A student may have a family emergency. Something may happen to their employment or their ability to juggle employment and school. Sometimes we're even talking about hunger. So in addition to some of the things that Jeffrey talked about that happens on campus, we really try to make sure that we're advising and supporting our students to tapping into the financial supports that exist on all of the campuses that we partner with, but we also provide a significant amount of emergency funds. Students can apply and get some of those small barriers met. This past year, we spent $500,000 in emergency funds to support about 600 students with some of those small gaps.
What's the turnaround time on that usually?
Extremely fast. It means that we have to have a staff member who is literally on top of emergency funding, processing applications every day, especially during the heaviest times, and turning those checks around as fast as possible. Sometimes it's a reimbursement, sometimes it's a payment directly to an institution.
Yeah, we actually do the same thing at Chicago Scholars, and we actually also have set aside what we call our leadership fund, where a student who may want to go study abroad but can't afford it, maybe they need books, maybe there's an opportunity to do an unpaid internship, which we don't believe in. We believe in paid internships, but if they have a great opportunity to do one, like last year's student had an opportunity to do one in the media, and it wasn't paid, but that was his dream career. We covered the stipend for the summer for the student. And so we always say we want to be the caring, rich family member that the student has to step in whenever they need it. In the pandemic, we had students lose housing, have to come home at an instant. Some parents lost family members. Some students lost family members as well. And so, having that pool of resources there has been really helpful to support students whenever they need it.
Yeah.
That's great.
You spoke about something that I want to just pause a moment. You mentioned food insecurity. And it's so important that our students have access to the basic needs so that they feel equipped and they can concentrate on getting an education. Without that bare minimum, it makes it very difficult. So thank you all for touching on that. I have the next question, and it's a 3-part, so I'll try to go slow. Students are coming to campuses and classrooms with deep-seated trauma that can sometimes result in them making decisions that could take them off course to their path. How are you working with students from a position of understanding and empathy, helping them through mistakes, as well as are your staff being trained on trauma-informed care? How are each of you implementing social emotional learning into your work with students?
So part of the Braven model is the unique cohort experience. And the cohort experience, we're setting up students in cohorts of about 5 to 8 to run through the Braven experience. And so these near-peer experiences, they're connected to a volunteer as well. But it really, what that cohort provides is a low-risk environment to fail, to practice, to fail, to make those mistakes. Priya used this word earlier, but we want to demystify what it means to fail. And we want to make sure that students have that practice in a safe space. But we've also, research has shown that when you're in a group in about 5 to 8, that's actually the best number in terms of like building those bonds in that community. But we see these peer relationships last well beyond the cohort experience and what students are able to take away with them.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah, we actually do very similar work. Our cohorts are in groups of 8. Students have 3 adult mentors as well. All of our staff did trauma-informed care last year. We actually work with our mentors as well to identify and flag things when we need to. But the thing that has been most helpful is working with the colleges directly. So I kind of did a mini college tour the last year where I was on campuses talking to leadership on schools, because it's not just the admissions department, it's having a supportive resource on the campus that a student go to in real time that makes a world of difference. And we've been able to build that with our 40 partners, 40 platinum partners who actually backfill any unmet merit need for our kids. But our other 120 plus college partners as well are all willing and now stepping up to say, we're gonna have someone here for your young people. So you've got the cohort, the mentor, a college liaison, a community of support that builds the ecosystem that young people need to thrive and be successful.
Speaking as a third organization that uses a cohort-based model, but I'll take a little bit of a different tact. So our program starts in the junior year of high school and spans this bridge into post-secondary. And similarly, students are connected to each other and to their one goal teacher. And that teacher's getting to know these students really well. And they're able together to identify the potential roadblocks that might exist toward enrollment and completion, and sort of practice them or try them on and think about the kinds of the ways that they may overcome those barriers, or the options that might exist while they're still in high school. So when they get into college or they're in the post-secondary space and they experience some of those roadblocks, they have something to lean on, including their one goal teacher who's still with them. And then the last thing I'll say here is that we actually did a study, an internal study on the root causes of non-completion. No surprise, finance was the largest, but you saw some other really big sort of areas, and one of the biggest themes was social, emotional, or mental health challenges. And we saw a lot of correlation between mental health challenges and finance and the ability to access both. And so we added on supports for our students through BetterHelp, an online mental health provider, in order to make sure that young people can access the kind of mental health that they really need.
For city colleges, our focus has really been in creating a culture of care, right, across the entire, all of our institutions, all of our stakeholders. And you know, one thing the pandemic did do, right, is that it all of a sudden made it an urgent matter to provide really holistic mental health supports for students. With the funds that we got, you know, with the COVID relief dollars, we were able to increase our supports and hire more folks in our mental health and wellness centers. Even after the pandemic and after those dollars dried up, we have maintained the personnel because we know how important it is. We've even understanding that and that demand, we added, it's not quite 24/7, but it's extended the evening and weekend hours that now our students have with culturally sensitive doctors, because now we have such a greater understanding of what it is that our students need all the time. And we also started Caring Campus, so our faculty are now talking about practices that create a caring environment for students. Our wellness centers have taken on the responsibility of training faculty and staff on trauma-informed care. So we've even gone to help our students become advocates for themselves. So we've really taken a step, an extra step, or a few extra steps in creating this culture of care at all of our institutions.
Thank you for that, Veronica. I was going to add that so many faculty have reported the increase of the students just experiencing mental health issues and so forth. And so to have that type of training as well as ramping up and scaling up those resources for students, it's so important. Jeffrey.
So, one of the things, and it's funny that the students call me the rules guy. And so quite often I get to speak to them about character development, and that's just so important. Obviously with orientation, I get to speak to not only students, but parents openly, honestly, and authentically about the expectations that we have when you come to the institution. We talk about bringing your, as my grandmother would say, bring your home training with you when you come to campus, and that there are rules and regulations to follow. We know that this is a time in their lives that students are going to bump their heads, make mistakes. We want to have the conversations with them to let them know that the actions of today are the consequences of tomorrow. And so we work diligently. We have intrusive conversations with them on a regular basis. We meet them where they are, whether it be in the cafeteria, at their events, in their spaces and places, when we are welcomed. But, it becomes a situation where we also recognize that students, faculty, staff, I always describe it, they either come with a backpack, suitcase, or steamer trunk of issues and concerns. Yeah. And so we have to, as a college campus, begin to unpack that and help them to become successful. And so, as mentioned, we've added on more counselors at various locations. Obviously, there's stigma to the notion of going to counseling. And so we do recognize, and we've created an opportunity for our multicultural resource areas to have counselors specific for underrepresented populations. We also know that students come out later at night, so we have counselors at the residence halls. We've even added counselors for athletics as well as even to our law school because we begin to see a greater strain and stress. But we want to make sure when we talk about trauma, we have our mental health first aid training that various groups get and more groups who desire to have it. We allow for that and work to train them. But we also talk as a community that you too, as employees of the institution, you have to take care of yourselves as well in order to take care of our precious commodities, our students. And so we're trying to work greater as a community to make sure that we're having open, honest conversations about mental health and doing those things necessary to really address those things for our entire campus community.
I love that. Wrapping around that support for students is so important. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. I'm going to go on a slight tangent. Low-income first-generation college students often face barriers that hinder them from navigating college and resources as seamlessly as their fellow classmates. A large number of low-income first-generation college students are also minorities. Not only are they faced with trying to navigate college for the first time, they also may be coming from underperforming high schools that failed to prepare them academically to meet the rigors of college. Now, there's several of you here from organizations aimed at supporting some of these students, but what can we do collectively to ensure that our students are college ready and have a level playing field to succeed amongst their peers?
Sufyan, this question is literally the reason One Goal exists. And this question speaks to me in part because at One Goal, we focus on ensuring that we're supporting the students who are at the intersection of being the most vulnerable to not being on a post-secondary path or to drop out or stop out along the way. And that means we are focused on students who are often the first in their family to go to college, may have financial challenges, potentially citizenship challenges, and also who are in that sort of academic middle. So we're supporting students who are typically coming in between a 2.0 and a 3.0 GPA halfway through high school, where many in the sort of post-secondary world would not consider those students to be college ready. And so we're trying to flip the narrative. Veronica used the term earlier, having colleges be more student ready. That's something that we do with our post-secondary partners to help them understand our students, to help them create policies and practices that may reduce barriers to completion for students. And to help them understand the value that One Goal students bring, even if they don't have that sort of 3.0 floor that a lot of colleges historically have been looking for. We have post-secondary partners that literally look at One Goal students junior and senior year GPAs separate from their cumulative, because they have learned that the cumulative GPA tells one story and isn't completely nuanced. So I say all this to say that I think that we have to do a better job holistically at seeing putting the responsibility in the higher ed space to become more student ready, to understand students better. And we need to make sure that, as I said earlier, we got to start earlier. Students need to get the kind of advising and support to envision their lives and design their future. They deserve the right to do that and to be empowered to do that much, much earlier.
And I'll add that I am very grateful to the nonprofits, like those that are here that really are supporting our students to get from high school to and really be the bridge. Those folks, the Sherpas that walk, that guide the students from high school to college. But I think that one part of it is the people and the care, but the other part is, I think what you're saying too, is the system, right? And this goes back to my point earlier that it's so easy for us to just add a lot of short-term things that are going to solve the acute problem, but not change the system so that we can really look at a sustainable long-term solution to, again, systems that weren't designed for us. And I'd say, this is where the beauty of the Chicago roadmap is between CPS and city colleges. We decided, it was a wonderful conversation. It was like, it's not your fault and it's not your fault. It's not. It's not about CPS, it's not about city colleges. How do we come together to do something for our students? And what we did for students that we knew there were so many students coming to us, coming to college and universities not being ready to take college level coursework, we said, okay, seniors are not taking math. Right? Let's start a transitional math course that will be delivered at the high school so that students are then more ready to test into college level math. We have seen huge increases over the last couple of years, with students now being more college ready than they were before. We just started the math transitional as well just a year ago, so we're seeing our numbers really go up. And all of this is in the benefit of the student. It's been, change is hard. Change is really hard, and it took our faculty and teachers and administrators, everybody coming together to really create the systems change that's necessary.
And it's not always welcome either, right?
Right.
And really quickly, because you asked what can you all do, what can people at home do?
Collectively, yeah.
Collectively, use your voice, advocate. There's so much change happening in our city. We're moving to an elected school board soon. The rules and even the systems and structures of how that's going to be done is being decided right now. How we select the seat, like all of that's happening. And so get actively involved to understand what that means and how it will impact your home. And then be vocal to your electeds, be vocal to people in your neighborhoods and communities. Like, use your voice. If you're a parent, use your voice, speak up. There's a great Kids First. There's amazing organizations out here doing this work. And I think as the more engaged that we get, the more we learn, the more we understand, the more we can then advocate on behalf for our young people in our communities.
I appreciate your answer and answering the question, so thank you. Yeah. Please.
If I may, to continue on this, because Braven is definitely at that other side of the bridge, or working on that bridge of connecting colleges and universities to employer partners. And I want to continue on this idea, how do we hold systems accountable? Because Braven definitely lives in this space where we're holding advocacy for employer partners. How do you change the systems in your space to make sure that students of color, first generation students, low income students are set up to succeed in the workplace, so that when they encounter stereotype threats, so that when they encounter imposter syndrome, they know how to navigate that in a way where they're cared for. And so it's absolutely, we're all here, most of us here are part of an employer partner. How do you take a look at the systems in place? Are they equitable to support students when they get to the door? They're set up to thrive there.
Mm-hmm. And one last thing I'll add on this, sorry. What we can all do, most of us here recruit volunteers, okay?
Can you expound on that?
All of us do. Yeah. We have a new partnership with 1 Million Degrees where we are going to go from 500 to 3,000 students. And each one of these students, right, and this is within just like 3 years, each one of these students is going to be paired with a volunteer who's going to be there with them from their first year, from their first day, right? Saying, you can do this, you can do this. What challenge do you have? You have a test today? I'm going to be there. I'm going to be waiting for you to tell me how you did, right? Just folks and also to connect them to employers, the social capital that's needed. Many of us here sitting down are recruiting volunteers to support students. I think that is a wonderful way for folks to get involved.
I think one of the most important things that I've found in my time in higher education, and I think we do it well at SIU, be authentic and care. Students exceed expectation when they know that you care about them. I have a student who I've been checking on, who now checks on me on a regular basis. Every Wednesday he comes to my office. And it's just a matter, I care about you, I have high expectations of you, and I want you to be successful. And so when we begin to have those real conversations with them, they too begin to believe, oh, I can do this. And if I'm not doing it for myself, I'm doing it for him. Because they don't care, they don't know what a vice chancellor is. They just know that there's this good-looking black man with a bow tie who really cares about my well-being. And so I think that that's the important part, because we have to recognize that there are some homes that they don't get that love.
Thank you so much. Any closing thoughts before we move on to the audience?
No, just thank you. And as a student, a first generation college student that came up in the ranks, I think mentorship is so important, as well as you spoke about grace. I'm so grateful that my freshman year didn't look like my junior and senior high school year. So thank you all for all you do to support our students.
These were the easy questions. Now let's give our audience a chance to weigh in. We're gonna, please feel free to come to the mic and ask any questions, share any feedback of anything you heard tonight or any new questions that may have arisen from what you've heard.
I have a question.
Please use the mic, please. Yeah, right up there. Thank you.
Oh, first, thank you all for coming, and I'm also a product of Braven. Some of my colleagues here are, so thank you so much for the stipends that you guys gave as well. I mean, yeah. My question is, what has been like the major problem you guys face in trying to like bridge the, student finance problem, and what have you guys put in place to make sure that you're actually, bridging this gap? Thank you.
Well, I think for us, one, having the conversation, I think it was mentioned earlier that it could be $500 that someone says, well, I can't continue school. And so we have to begin to be intrusive and have those conversations. If it's first year students, we have our first year experience course, our University 101 course, but our first year experience program. We always ask faculty and staff to report if there are students who are in need. We have a program called Saluki Cares that can help with some finances, and there are other means, but we have to begin to ask the questions. And so that's a very important piece of it. And so once we find out those things, we let them know that they're not in it alone, and that we're trying to find a way to help them continue their education and be successful to graduation.
When we start early, like we talk about starting with the student the minute they're in our program, working with the parents and the family to understand not only academic and cultural fit, but also financial fit, to lay out where it's no uncertain terms. We know this is what it's going to cost. Now, obviously, there's the hidden cost of college. All those things pop up. We mentioned a lot of us have external funds to support and making sure that we're there. But a big part of that too is making sure the young people understand that these funds are there. Oftentimes they go unused both in our program and on the campuses because they don't know, I can go to my school, I can go to my office and ask for financial aid office and ask for more support, advocate on my own behalf. And then scholarships. Like we have a website at chicagoscholars.org. You can go to scholarships. You don't have to be a scholar for all of our scholarships that are there. You don't have to currently be enrolled in one of our university partners. We have a ton of scholarships that are there for current students, current college students, and high school students from any background all over the city to access.
I can share. Apart from the Braven X program, which does deliver the stipends, one of the things that Braven takes accountability for is actually sourcing scholarships for our students. So our students receive a biweekly opportunities newsletter where it's internships, entry-level opportunities, scholarships, and fellowships as well. If there is, say, like a conference, we support to help close that gap if there is a financial commitment on that piece. But part of it is we want to stock the pond with opportunities, making sure we teach our students how to fish, but we want to make sure that pond is as stocked as possible.
Listen, all of us are being as creative as we can, right? I'm so glad you asked this question. It's such an important problem to solve, and it's a systemic problem. And so you asked before what all of us collectively can do. We need to advocate. We need to lean on our elected officials. We need to increase the Pell. We need to offer more opportunities for young people through systems, and continue to do the sort of creative things that we're doing, but they're Band-Aid solutions. So at the end of the day, we all have to come together. We have to want it, and we need to advocate.
Right. I mean, we've done, we do have an emergency stipend program too at our wellness centers. So, students can go to our wellness centers and request the emergency grants. We also depend quite a bit on our nonprofit partners, such as 1 Million Degrees and Hope, who also provide stipends to our students. But on the extreme side too, oftentimes our students find themselves homeless at city colleges. I mean, 15% of our students, based on a survey, the Real College survey that we did a few years ago, we learned that 15% were unhoused. And so we sought out to also have partnerships. We have one with DePaul USA, and they will house our students. So we now have residential housing for our unhoused. So we have programs such as that to really help students when they get themselves into really difficult situations, because we want them to stay in school.
Thank you all. Any other questions, comments, please? And if you have it for a specific person, feel free to direct it
It's
to
for
them
everyone.
as well. Oh, great.
So a theme that I noticed in everybody's response is like the benefit of having partnerships with other organizations. And so my question is twofold. What's the strategy that you all use when thinking about who to partner with to best support students? And then thinking for the future, what are some of the nuances that you're seeing in your organizations or institutions? And what are the partnerships that you're hoping to make in the future?
I started at Chicago Scholars as the vice president of partnerships. So I'm not like the traditional educator. My background is actually in computer engineering, and I left that to come to do this work. And the strategy, I actually wrote it, and we were real simple. It was student first. You got to be centered and like see our students for who they are. Second, you have to understand and value ready. For us, that's racial justice, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion. And then after that, you have to be intentional about like bringing students in and representing them, looking at their identities as unique and valuable. I'm happy to say that we've got partnerships with most of the folks on this stage. Like, I think every year we send 40 to 50 kids to Brave and X. One Goal and OMD have both been part of our Emerge summer internship program. We've got 122 students at city colleges. So Chicago Scholars really has been rooted in that. Our most successful partnerships are with others doing this work collectively. So Chicago, we're the background of the Cub Scholars Program. The CTA Wash Floor Elevating Futures Program is a Chicago Scholars Program. The Sterling Bay Education Program is a Chicago Scholars Program that we built collectively with these organizations because they've wanted to support students in a way that's real and provide real jobs and create impact. And I think it's just something that we want to continue to do. Most hopeful for me, again, coming from tech, I've never understood, and this is just something that I see in nonprofit, we have to work better together. We're all going after the same funders. We're cutting off 100,000, 200,000 there. If we were in tech, there would be strategic plans saying we're going after 200 million collectively to help every kid in the city collectively. Even tonight, we heard so many ways that we overlap and do different things. We're all paying for that. Why aren't we doing that together? And that's how my brain is. That's my hope and my goal in this work before I leave here is that there's an established program where we're doing that together to help everybody.
Mm-hmm. I think that it also highlights that, when at least when I started in this work and in this city, everyone was doing this work in silos, and that has changed. So we take a very similar approach to Chicago Scholars with partnerships, really thinking about what are our gaps, what do students need, what are we hearing from young people, and how can we fill those gaps, and how can we partner strategically with organizations that are going to not just sort of add on, but will really enhance what our students need in order to complete a degree or credential. And like Jeffrey said, we can only do that if we work together. And I do really believe that there's so much more collaboration happening in this space than ever before.
I'll just say that at city colleges, I mean, we're a system of 7 colleges that are all over the city, and each one of our colleges is different. You know, they serve, the average age is different, right? We've got more parents, we've got grandparents, we've got, students coming right out of Chicago public schools. We've got some colleges are predominantly Black institutions, others are Hispanic serving institutions, more immigrants. Anyway, we could use all of the partnerships, right? So I think it is about who we serve, which college, what's the population, what are our needs and the opportunities, and the assets that are available in the vicinity, right? And that is how we build partnerships at the college level. Then we've got the district level partnerships too, that are often the college access programs that we have here. Those tend to be more district wide. But I'll tell you, we have this huge goal, which is not to decrease, not to shrink the equity gap. It is to eliminate our equity gap by 2032, and our goal is to cut it by 30% by 26. So we know we can't do that alone. There's no way we can do that alone. So this is why I talk a lot about partnerships. It's because we need everybody to help us get to that goal.
We're all here to help you, Veronica.
Yeah, awesome, thanks.
Yeah, so for Braven, we're fortunate to partner with community-based organizations and at the higher education partner level. And to our community-based organizations, one, we want to make sure that point blank, we are serving historically excluded students, and that they have career development as a strategy point. But typically because we're coming in at the college level, we want to make sure that we're finishing the continuum. We're finishing, again, that cradle to career pathway and putting them on a path to achieve their highest aspirations. At the university and college level, we want to make sure we're uplifting the mighty middle. We're going to universities and colleges where they need us the most. And so we're looking at our percentage of students who is Pell eligible on campus. What's your first generation student population look like? Your students of color population. Again, going to the universities and colleges that need us the most. Mm-hmm.
And for us, we want partners that obviously will help us grow the life cycle of the students. What are our expectations when we're recruiting students? Once they get there, how are they matriculating and persisting ultimately to graduation and becoming great alum? We're very fortunate that we have amazing alumni at Southern Illinois University who help us in partnering, but they also, if they can't directly do it, they may have access to other partners that allow for us to have a financial gain. And if they're not giving money directly, they create internship, externship opportunities for our students. And so it's not always about direct money and direct giving, but there are also opportunities and partnerships that allow for students, again, to gain experiences. And so I'm always very fortunate to be able to talk to Southern Illinois University alumni about those opportunities. I work directly with our Career Development Services Office, so making sure that students come to college, they get experiences so they can start a career, not just have a job. Talking to Tania, one of the things that I said to her, if it's been done and it's been done well, a Saluki probably did it. And so
That's right.
We are very thankful for our alumni and the partnerships that they create, but we're also very thankful for our higher education and our secondary education partners and our foundational partners.
I appreciate that. We have time for one more question, please.
Hi, my name is Ian Chris Panaligan, and I'm a nursing student at Chicago State University. I know Amy touched a little bit on imposter syndrome, but I wanted to open it up to the rest of the panel. Coming from the perspective of a student, and I can relate to this as well, many of us are hesitant to pursue an education, further education, or a career accelerating opportunity. Because maybe we're in the fear of not being good enough in comparison to our peers, or intimidation, fitting in as a minority, or just becoming overwhelmed in a changing system that we're not used to. So I would like to ask, what advice could you give to students like myself to pursue an education or an opportunity and view it as something we are capable of? Thank you.
I love this question. Please, if we could, we'll start Priya
Sure.
with you and we'll come down the road.
Absolutely.
Please.
Ian, thank you for asking this question. I think there's a lot of directions we could go here, but I think the thing that keeps me going in this work is that a big part of it is about helping students believe in themselves. You are your own light. And you have so much in you to give, you all do. And I think that it's so important to surround yourself with people that help you find your light and remind yourself. And that's so much of this work is about belief. It's about others having belief in you. It's about you having belief in yourself and others. It's paying it forward as well. So I know that's sort of a big answer, but it's what kept me going when I experienced and continue to experience imposter syndrome, and I hope it'll keep you going as well.
I wish somebody asked me the other day, right? Like if you could go back to being a freshman, like what would you tell yourself, And I'm just like, well, I don't know if I would listen though, so that's like hard. But what I did when I felt that imposter, I felt like I didn't belong, like the sayings, I didn't know the sayings. I came from a household where we spoke Spanish. I didn't grow up with all that. And I remember just hiding and not just feeling like I didn't belong, but feeling scared that somebody was going to discover me and I was going to be ashamed. And that was really hard. And I don't think I did what I should have done, right? Which was to take advantage of the opportunity, because knowing the confidence piece of, you're there because you should be there. You earned it. You belong. That's right. But I think part of it is asking questions before you start college, right? Like getting a mentor. I mean, so many of the folks here, they have organizations that are working with students before they start college because they're trying to prepare them in the mindset, right, of believing in yourself, starting to figure out what your purpose is, because your purpose is what's going to get you through, right? It's your purpose that's going to get you through. And if you can start shaping that before you go to college, then you're just one step ahead, right? You're just that much more comfortable and you're that much more confident in yourself and what you plan on doing, because you have a lot to share with the world. But again, I don't know if I would have listened to myself, but if I had started younger, I would have. I think I would have been a little stronger.
I love it.
Thank you.
Hi, Ian, also a Raven student, so shout out. I think two things carry me through when I get into those moments of imposter syndrome, and they definitely still come up. One, it's okay to fail. And it's not an indictment on your abilities or your potential. It's okay to fail. And it's actually, I've learned more from my failures than my successes, and they're great. And the second thing is that you have a chorus of supporters who have worked so hard, who have sacrificed so much, and they're looking at you and you're like, you're the person. You're gonna carry us through, and you are your ancestors' wildest dreams.
That's right.
I love that, thank you.
While we don't like to speak about it, openly, we recognize that there are systems in place that would rather destroy than develop in society. And so, one of the things I always try to tell myself, I tell my students, and I love quotations. Christian Larson talks about believe in yourself and all that you are, and know that there's something greater in you than any obstacle you will ever face. And so I take that in every single day and try to pour it out to my students. And you're going to struggle. Everybody's going to have doubt. It's going to creep in. But surround yourself, as it was said, surround yourself with people that are going to continuously encourage you. There's a saying that if you can't change the people around you, change the people around you.
Thank you.
Yeah, during very early on in the pandemic, President Obama invited a group of leaders to a Zoom call. And on that call, someone asked him, how do you deal with imposter syndrome? And he said, I realized very early on in my career that every table that I was at, I was there because I deserved to be there. I think there's first recognizing that, but then there's also the real thing that there are systems in place that are designed to try to keep us away from certain tables. So that's when I moved right to Shirley Chisholm, who said, when there's not a seat at the table, I bring a white folding chair. And so I want to tell you, sometimes you need to pull up with your white folding chair to the table and create seats, and as you do that, bring somebody else with you.
Wow. Thank you. Tania, how about you?
Wow. You know, I think for myself, it's just always having that support. You guys talked a lot about mentors, also having a friend support, thought partners around you. I have a friend in the audience, Clayton Pryor. I have my best friend. I have my husband. We all support each other and make sure that we're uplifting each other, we're creating opportunities, and we're giving each other that vote of confidence. They're the best cheerleaders. And so that helps me to help, you know, kind of reduce the imposter syndrome, because I do deserve to be here, and so do all of you.
That's right.
Thank you. What a beautiful question to end us with. I know myself, and probably everyone here, still continues to feel like an imposter many times, inadequate many times, not good enough often. But you keep pushing forward. So, you know, hold true to everything that's been said tonight. Such beautifully said, and thank you so much. Tania is so grateful to you for co-hosting Change Agents with me tonight. I'll have you back in a future episode. Your insight really helped shape our conversation, so thank you so much. Yes. This is sort of conversation that we can only find on CAN TV, and I think tonight has surely been an example of that.
I couldn't agree more. I think this has been an amazing conversation that brought to bear a lot of issues that really we don't talk about enough.
We would like to extend our sincerest thanks to our outstanding panelists, our wonderful audience, and each of you at home tonight for watching. We hope you heard something that made you think. Keep this conversation going and hopefully support the organizations and institutions that are working so hard to address the inequalities facing so many of our students and communities. I thank you again and wish you a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see you soon.